Mobility Mindset.
Hello and welcome to the Mobility Mindset with Trexo Robotics. We recreated this space to bring together families, medical experts, and advocates, and anyone with an interest in or to tie to pediatric disabilities. Together, we will dive into important conversations about disability, inclusion, and the journey of parenting a child with disabilities. At Trexo Robotics, we believe that everyone who wants to talk and walk should have the opportunity to do so. The Mobility Mindset is here to offer real, heartfelt conversations and share resources that support and empower those navigating these experiences, like myself, my colleagues, and some of the folks that work here at Trexo Robotics. I'd like to introduce our first guest, probably the most important person here at Trexo Robotics, Manmeet Magoo. Manmeet, tell the folks here
Hey,
at
Sarah.
Trexo Robotics on our podcast all about you, the man.
Yeah, I think this is a great first podcast, and we're going to use this as a way to essentially all be co-hosts, and we'll turn the mic at each other, hear each other's stories, and have the audience really get to know us a little bit about Trexo Robotics, what we're doing, what the future holds. So yeah, I'm super excited about this.
It'll be pretty cool, for sure.
We just want to kind of make notice that everybody's aware February 14th is International Day for Children with Epilepsy. That's a big one in my household, especially right now these days. But just want to know that we as a company are definitely going to be supporting Purple in representation for the day, and hope that you guys can do the same on the 14th.
Awesome.
That being said, Manmeet, we talked about Epilepsy Day. Let's talk about you for a bit.
Yeah, so I can talk about maybe just some background about myself and kind of how this journey led into Trexo. So some background, originally from India. I came to Canada back in 2008 to study my undergrad. So I studied mechatronics engineering at the University of Waterloo. Learned how to kind of build robots and stuff. Around that time, Iron Man came out. So every mechatronics engineer wanted to build Iron Man because, that's the coolest thing you can do. And around the third year and fourth year of my undergrad, I was actually doing a project where I was building a custom EMG sensor. And so for those that don't know what an EMG sensor is, essentially this sensor that attaches onto a muscle and it can detect when you're trying to flex a muscle. And so had this cool idea in my mind at that time that maybe what if we put an EMG sensor on our, let's say our arm, and why don't we build an exoskeleton arm? So it'll be like an Iron Man robot where it will detect when I'm trying to flex my muscle, and it will actually the exoskeleton will help me lift heavier weights. So that was kind of the initial dream of building Iron Man. So my friend and I either actually built a basic functioning prototype, that EMG sensor and stuff, and it was pretty cool. And then I traveled to India just to visit my family, and around that time my nephew had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Well, technically a rare genetic condition which demonstrates pretty similar to CP. And I was talking to my brother at the time, telling him about this cool Iron Man project that I'm trying to do. And at the same time, he's telling me, oh, that sounds amazing. And he's like, actually, I've been wanting to build an exoskeleton for my son, for Pranit. And he's telling me, I'm thinking I'll make this. After that, just on my way back to Canada, I kept thinking about it. And I was like, why am I building this upper arm exoskeleton? What is the actual point of this? Maybe we should just build something for him. That'd be cool. And so I remember getting back to Canada, and this was going to be our fourth year design project. So in Waterloo, you have a FIDP, a fourth year design project, and everybody gets to build a project of their choosing, whatever you want it to be. And we were going to do this upper arm exoskeleton. And around that time, spoke to my friends who were like, guys, what if we make it a lower body exoskeleton, something that Pranit could use? And the professor just almost straight up laughed at our face. He's like, what do you know about exoskeletons? Like, what's going to be the power output? What's going to be the battery capacity? Have you ever built anything like this? We're like, we don't know. And truly, we had no freaking clue what we're doing and how we're going to do this. Put a basic prototype together just in time for the fourth year design project, had it kind of like barely moved kind of thing. It was like, forget Pranit, I wouldn't put myself in that. It was just a very bare bones device. But we did that FIDP, the fourth year design project, did the presentation at the end. And just because it was so complex and detailed, like the stuff that went into it, we just won the first prize. They were just happy or surprised by the ambition, and we were able to actually pull something that kind of moves. So we won the first prize. That was awesome. And then me and another friend at the time said, let's pursue it further maybe. And, we started talking to some researchers at the time, some other experts, kind of the same story again. It was like, what do you guys know about building an exoskeleton? You guys are two kids out of undergrad, heard this even from friends, from researchers, from professionals or people that advise companies. There's entire research labs focused on exoskeletons. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Working on this exoskeleton for everyone, and then built the prototype of that exoskeleton. The minute I tried it out, minute I put it on, I realized this is never going to work. Learned a very important lesson along that way, which is like, if you try to build something that everybody might kind of like, you're going to may end up with something that no one likes at all. And you'd much rather build something that a small number of people really, really want and really, really love. So I kind of spent some time on that and realized this is basically a waste. I didn't build anything in the end. And so started a job working full time. This was always in the back of my head though, that I couldn't build the exoskeleton for Pranit. On the evenings, I just started every day getting home, started working a little bit on it, or weekends, started spending some time on it. This was all still very rudimentary, nothing like at a proper scale that can be done. And then I finished working for a couple of years and then decided to do my master's. So I did my MBA at Rotman in the University of Toronto. And around that time, Rahul, who has been my friend since year one, since 2008, he also decided to do his master's in robotics at UFT. And so we decided to room together. And around that time, you're doing your MBA, everybody's basically talking about what job they're going to get, summer internship, but couldn't get that thought out of my mind. Like, maybe I could have built something for Pranit. And then thinking, and I was like, you know what? If I don't build this now, I'll never be able to do this. I just want to be able to, like, when I'm old, be like, I tried. At least I gave it a shot and not just, not have this regret in my mind. And at that time, Rahul was doing his master's and he was kind of not happy with his master's researcher. And so I kind of talk to him and kind of convinced him, why don't you make your master's thesis on this as well? That's where it really changed, because we got an actual smart person working on this at that time, which was Rahul, and got a rudimentary prototype, booked a flight to India and packed the Trexo in the suitcase, flew to India and then assembled it there. My nephew Pranit had a Riften at the time, so we put it onto his Riften and moment of truth, let's try it out. Finally try it out. It does not work. And it was the same thing where the first time I tried it, first time put Pranit in it and press play, immediately, like, as the literal gears are turning, you can see this will not work. And why, you can see all the failure point, why this will not work.
We didn't have
essentially
smoke,
was really
right?
underpowered.
No smoke or fire or anything, right? Good.
No. In fact, like, obviously safety was always number one concern. It was actually, we had underpowered it way too much. So it was actually too underpowered to be able to move Pranit's legs. That was a bigger issue. So instead of the other way around, we took obviously a safe approach, but went a little too much on one extreme. So super disappointed, was like, worked the whole summer. Here I am and it's not working. And whatever. The next day, I remember waking up, watching some videos of SpaceX rockets blowing up. just to give myself some motivation that it's okay. These things happen. You have to get back up from these failures. Yeah. Remember talking to my grandma and she's like, you tried. It's okay. Which really hit me. Come back to Canada. I realized immediately that this is not a solution that can actually work, but it just kind of worked. Had some press on it. There was a news article. Suddenly there's some families reaching out. They're like, we want this as well. There's a clinic who reaches out, and then this clinic is like, we want to buy one. And I was like, wow. And then even gives an order with an initial down payment as well. So I was like, wow. And that was a big realization of like, it's not just my family that wants to see their kid walk, understands the benefits of mobility, but pretty much every family out there. And people are willing to do anything to make that happen. And just like how my family was willing to do anything. We were looking for solutions at the time. If there was a super expensive $100,000 machine, we would have been like, yeah, let's figure it out. How can we do this? And, got some initial competition, won some competitions, got some initial funding to build another prototype. Then we raised some money and kind of got off to the races from there. And we started Trexo with this mission to enable walking for anyone who wishes to do so. One of the core things we talk about is walking is a human right, and anyone who wishes to walk should be able to walk. And that's kind of been a core for the company. It's kind of been a core for us as we think about the future, and also the Mobility Mindset podcast and how it ties to that.
That's pretty amazing. How long did that
Thanks
all
for the
take
story,
from
sir.
start to finish, from when you started from schooling to where you started when the first Trexo was created?
Yeah, so I mean, the idea was probably 2012 when it was like, maybe we can do this. But then the first prototype that Pranit actually tried was 2016, and then started the company around that time. But we started working full-time after our master's. So around 2017 is when we first started working full-time on it. So it's a long journey. We're quite a few years in already.
That's spectacular. I mean, and all the things that are going on today, and from probably when Marc started, seeing such changes and I came on later. I mean, things are just evolving each and every year, if not every day. So it's pretty cool to see. I get to watch just as an employee, and I'm just amazed, and it's just spectacular to watch myself. So I'm fascinated.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of my story, but I want to turn the mics over to you guys as well, because I think everybody has heard my story, or many people have heard my story, but almost no one has heard the story of Marc and Sarah. So, why don't we start with you, Marc? Like,
Okay.
wherever far back you want to go.
Well, I'll go back. Hey, it was good. So before my life here at Trexo, I used to work with guys with acquired brain injuries at a hospital in Hamilton. I worked there for 17 years in the acquired brain injury department. It was called Hickory House at the time. And we did a lot of life skills planning and support for people that were just after, it was usually car accidents and insurance claims that were kind of sending people there. And I worked with them in the hospital setting where we would kind of get them to the point where their behaviors were manageable so that they could go home. And then what I was also doing on the side was doing contract work with those families once the people went home, to try and re-engage them back into their regular lives and get them back to doing activities and that kind of thing. But so I did that for a while, and had a son named Mitch, and he was about 5 years old. So go back to train up. So when Mitch was born, he was born with a rare genetic condition, but we didn't know that at the time. There were no prenatal screenings. There was nothing to tell us that there was going to be any issues.
Oh, well.
When he turned 8 months old, he was in my arms one night on the couch and started making these weird movements and noises that I didn't know what was going on. My mom was a nurse. My sister's a respiratory therapist. I called my mom. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. Something's not right. Come over here and check out what's going on. She happens to live 10 minutes down the road. And she's like, she came by and she's like, yeah, you should make an appointment and we should go to see your doctor maybe tomorrow and kind of see what's going on. Sorry, I backed away too far from the mic there. First day, learning things here. But so I took him to the doctor the next day, and everything kind of went crazy because the doctor was like, yeah, those are seizures. That's not typical, obviously. You need to go down to Sick Kids Hospital and have a conversation there because this isn't the place where you need to be. So we went down to Sick Kids that day, and we were in the emergency room, ready to get admitted, whatever. And Mitch had another one of his little seizure episodes. I didn't really know what they were at the time, but that's when everything went crazy because there was a nurse with us who just reached out and slammed this big red button on the wall, and the wall opened. It was glass. I wasn't prepared for it whatsoever. And like 15 people came running into the room and pushed me back against the wall and just surrounded him on a table. And that's when everything went nuts. And we lived at Sick Kids for 3-4 days. And they basically told us that Mitchell had infantile spasms, a rare form of epilepsy that was probably going to affect his trajectory of learning and everything with his life. And yeah, so we just basically got handed a very hard pill to swallow at the time. And then there was a new reality where we had medications and we were titrating things. And basically we had a child who was obviously a baby. He was only 8 months old, but he would just sleep all the time because we had him medicated we had to medicate him to the point where he wasn't having seizures, but the result of that was a child who slept for 20 of 24 hours a day for his first 2.5 years of life. And then when we finally got past that, we started to get into regular medications. Thankfully, after about 1.5 years, the seizures, like the infantile spasms, stopped because kids typically grow out of it, we were told.
Sorry, can I pause a little bit there and
Please.
What was the emotional reaction like at that time in the first one?
I was not a healthy individual. There was I want to say the first 4 years of Mitchell's life was very, very difficult for both my wife, myself, everybody around us. It was not good in any way, shape, or form. There was you kind of got handed a deck of cards and there was nothing you could do to pull out a hand that was one that you wanted to play. So it was really, really tough. And there was lots of really crappy nights and lots of heartache and lots of garbage that I'm sure a lot of people watching this are familiar with, unfortunately, but some others don't have this experience. And that's probably a good thing because you shouldn't have that. But anyway, it was really, really treacherous. And it's not good on relationships. It's not good for your mental health. You don't sleep well. You're not eating well. You're physically not good. Everything was bad. And you don't feel empowered at all. You feel like somebody took the wind out of your sails and you're stranded and you're stuck and you don't know what to do. At least that was my experience with the whole situation. I know it was my wife's, and I know it was a lot of people surrounding me, watching me go through all this crap. But at the end of the day, you feel helpless. You just want your kid to not have these things, and there's not a damn thing you can do to change or affect anything at that point. At least that's the way it felt. So yeah, it was hopelessness and just really gross feelings that people. Anyway, it was a really tough 5 years. Past that,
one of the ways it's been described to me is you're taking a flight, you're going to, let's say, a destination. Let's say you're going to Amsterdam or something, you're flying there and the plane lands and it turns out you're now on Mars and it's a completely different location. It's not where you want it to be. You are here. You don't know what the rules are. You don't know how to engage, what to do, but you are here.
Yeah, there's nobody there to give you a playbook of what you're supposed to do. You just kind of fly blind at that point and really you try to take as much information as you can from people, but nobody's ever had the same experience. So you're asking people and they can't help you with that. You can ask doctors and they can give you medical advice, but that's not what you're looking for. Yeah, you're dropped off on Mars by yourself and that's it. But yeah, no, so it was a hairy few years. We were able to get his seizures under control, thankfully. When the infantile spasms stopped when he was 2.5. And we did really well, actually, in that department. He was completely seizure-free for almost 8 years, medicated really well. And through that 8-year period, we were able to actually start working on helping him progress. Because of his rare genetic condition, which is what's creating all of these things, We had him fully exome sequenced because they were trying to figure out, well, at first they wanted to figure out what was causing the epilepsy. So to do that, they run a genetic screening where they test 475 alleles or something to that effect. And it came back that there were 4 potentials. So they tested my wife and myself against that, and I had the exact same 4. So it basically negated those tests altogether and left us with no information. And we kind of went, oh, okay, so we've got nothing, which is where we currently stand. He doesn't have a diagnosis. We know he has a rare genetic condition because the genetics team over at his hospital has said he does, because he has physical markers on his body that say that he does. But through genetic screening, there's nothing showing up. And through regular diagnosis of stuff, there's nothing showing up. All we have is a big list of presentations. So the way he categorized my son now is, I guess, in ways that he is different from norm, because there is no like SMA or a Rett syndrome or what have you for a category for him to fall into. But I can tell you, like, he has epilepsy that, well, I guess I kind of spoke about that quite at length, but that was pretty much curtailed up until he turned 10 years old, and he's about to turn 11 actually tomorrow. Happy birthday, buddy.
Happy birthday, Mitchell.
Yep. But in the last year, things have gotten kind of hairy, a little bit off the rails from what we're used to. The seizure activity has been picking up quite a bit. But anyway, besides the epilepsy piece, he's nonverbal. He's got audiovisual impairment. He's got cortical visual impairment. He's got an auditory impairment, obviously mobility issues. He's got a lot of stuff going on and a lot of challenges that we work hard with. He's working with a Tobii eye gaze system now that we just kind of started up in the last year. But anyway, he's doing what he can do.
And I guess was there a change, or how did the Trexo come into the picture for you?
Well, yeah, I was just about to go here with that, because like the way I was just describing that feeling of like total lack of empowerment, that just hopelessness kind of changed when I saw this thing online and kind of decided that was where I was going to go with things. So back in the end of 2019, I was messing around on my Facebook and I saw a video of a kid walking in Manmeet's robotic exoskeleton here. And I kind of went, okay, I've been working with people in an acquired brain injury department, helping them do skills to get them back to their regular lives. The potential I could see with that thing is something that I wanted my son to try, because I thought, maybe I can change the way things are going right now, and who knows what's possible, but like I have to see if I need to give this a try. And then I looked it up online and thought that it would be in some foreign country because it was just a little 3-second video clip that I saw on Facebook or whatever. And to my very pleasant surprise, it was in the next town over where this was being done. And I kind of went, okay, and put my son in the car, and we went for a drive that afternoon and knocked on the door of Trexo and basically had a chat with Manmeet, and we scheduled an appointment, and I brought him back the next week, and we went for a walk in the office, and I was feeling, it's hard to describe the feeling that you get when you see your kid in something that it's like you just have a unicorn in your family room, and you're like, what the hell is going on right now? Because it doesn't even make sense. Because basically what it is, it's a toolbox of ability to be able to give your child the thing, well, in my case, the thing that he was missing. And I just kind of fell head over heels for it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make this happen. They're incredibly expensive, so I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I need to make this happen. So I kind of went, I tried to convince my wife that this was a good idea. I tried to convince my family that this was a good idea. A lot of my family didn't agree with me. They thought that the money could be better spent in other ways. It could be like, you have when you got a kid who's 3 years old or 4 years old, and you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know how to best allocate the minimal funds or the minimal stuff that you've got to best get the results that you're hoping that you could potentially get out of it. And yeah,
But what made you still say, no, I want this? What was it?
Honestly, I don't know. I am so stubborn. I think that has something to do with it. But like, I really think that like just part of me, when I saw him in it that first, like, it's one thing to see this machine, and then it's another thing to see your child in that machine. So it's like looking at a car versus driving a car. It's a very different experience. And when I saw my son in it, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. This has to happen because I was a guy who wasn't able to affect change in a way that I needed to. And this would give me the opportunity to potentially do that. And I was grasping at straws really hard at that point to try and find something that would allow me to do some change in my life and in my family's life that was desperate at that point because, like I said, it wasn't a positive time at that time. And this kind of did it. I didn't have VK to put on one, so I did what I tell other families to do, which is let other people pay for it. So I ran a GoFundMe campaign, which, to be perfectly honest with you, is a very hard pill to swallow. You have to sell yourself at a level that is not comfortable at all. And you're trying to sell yourself, basically your friends, which is a really gross feeling. But at the same time, it's a really weird relationship because your friends want to support you, but they don't want to say anything. And you need the support. You don't want to say anything. And it's just, as long as you don't say anything, everybody stays the status quo, but nothing changes and nothing positive happens and nothing gets fixed. So instead of dealing with that, I was just going to say, screw it. I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to do what it takes and I don't care. And I'm going to go into that very uncomfortable place and tell the whole world why this sucks and why I need you to help me fix that. So I did and sent that video out to everybody I know, which was not a fun experience, but at the same time, I got so much positivity back from it. And like, I don't want to get into the time frame that it took, but like, it was a much shorter period of time than I thought it was going to be to acquire the funds to be able to do this. But yeah, you got to take yourself out of that comfort zone and do it. But when we finally got one for him, we acquired the funds for it. It was a lot to kind of take in. That like my community wanted me, they got behind me 100%. These were all the people that I went to high school with, some of my teachers from high school were donating. My friends' parents were donating. Like they were all people that like personally knew and could like shake their hand and say thank you to afterwards. Was a really nice feeling at the same time. But anyway, and then so when we did that was during the Super Bowl in 2020, because everybody happens to be looking at their phones and I took advantage of the fact that they were betting. And anyway, long story short, it worked out pretty well. Manmeet actually showed up at my house in May and dropped this thing off at my front door.
I remember that day.
Yeah, I still have
I mean,
we're wearing a t-shirt that said Google across the front. Yeah.
yeah, I was surprised. Oh, another sale. All right. Hand delivery.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. So, Manmeet was in my family room one day, dropping us off our Trexo, just like, the world had just closed down at that point. Like it was May 2020. There was 2 months into like ghosts, as you guys are well aware. But anyway, it happened to work out really well time-wise for us because I was not going in because Mitchell, my son, was at home with us during COVID, and he had the 3 years prior to us getting the Trexo, he had issues. The medication that we were giving him for his epilepsy was so potent that it was working great on the epilepsy, but it was turning him into like a bag of liquid. He had no tone whatsoever, couldn't hold his head up, couldn't hold his arms up, couldn't do anything. He was on a pureed diet on food because he couldn't swallow solids. He just had no tone whatsoever and got sick and couldn't cough. And because he couldn't cough, he got pneumonia really bad. We took him to Oakville Hospital, and next thing I know, we were in an ambulance getting rushed down to Sick Kids Hospital and ended up living there for 40 days. And he was on a ventilator for 40 days, basically bringing him back to life. But he only had 10% of one of his lungs working. The other one was totally cooked. And they were able to bring him back after living there for over a month. But so anyway, what I was trying to get to with that is just a really, really, really weak child who could not really do a whole heck of a lot. And then when this thing came into our lives, I was able to affect change in a way that I was really hoping I could, but was skeptical because, let's be honest, it's a machine and nobody had done what I was planning on doing with it. And I didn't know if it was possible. So I just said, let's see what happens. And I wasn't working, because he was so sick with his respiratory issues, I took that 6-month period that Canada offered through the CERB, where you could not go into work, because I didn't want to nobody knew what COVID was at that time. Everyone was scared shitless of it. And I didn't want to bring that back into my house because of the issues that had already presented themselves in a way that were not good. So that's okay. So anyway, long story short, we were able to get the Trexo for him. And when we started, I got him into the device and we started doing sessions with him. It would take about a half an hour to do. We'd just walk up and down the street in front of my house over and over and over and over and over again. And if we'd start off, it'd be like a half an hour and he'd take 500 steps, and we were walking really slow, and the neighbors all came out and nobody was getting close because there was social distancing, whatever, but they come out the front doors and everybody's like screaming at us from their front steps and all the rest. It was fantastic. And then after about 6 months of using it with him, I could see him change completely. Like, he went from a kid who couldn't hold his head up, and so all of his fluids at that time that he was intaking, we were having to put this thickening agent into to make it like a porridge instead of it being regular liquid, because it would just pour straight into his lungs and he'd get aspirated pneumonia on a regular basis. So after 6 months of using this thing, he was able to hold his head up, and it was his birthday, and I figured, push the envelope a bit and see if he can try something solid. And we were able to move into solid foods. And the next thing I know, we were able to get rid of all the thickening agents and all that stuff. And he started getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And like, he went from a kid who couldn't hold his head up to one that was able to help me transition him from one thing to the other, because he was standing in between. And like,
I think I heard you say one time he went from liquid diet to having steak on his birthday.
That's it. We got him a filet mignon, and I barbecued him up. Like, if we're going to go to solid food, we got to go to solid food, right? So we're going to start with the good stuff, and nice and soft and all the rest of it. But yeah, he went straight from like effectively porridge everything to a filet mignon, and then from there, sky's the limit, and he loves curry chicken now. But anyway, yeah,
and then on his strength as well. So on the core strength, like,
well, the core. So that's the biggest. Like, honestly, that's still to this day the biggest piece that we notice as a help, because he's getting much, much heavier now. He's close to 60 pounds now, but he can support his own body weight. So like in the shower, instead of him being in a commode chair, he just stands up and he leans against me, because he has enough strength through his core that he's able to do that now. It's been we've sent him therapy. We work with him in thousands of every way that we possibly can. But at the same time, this thing has to have made massive changes in him, because I've watched it happen, and it's been a really nice experience. Be empowered from a place of helplessness.
I guess one thing maybe worth mentioning is, when you initially got it, what was your ideal dream and what would happen versus, maybe what...
My dream versus reality? Yeah, because I was going to buy this thing and we were going to use it for 6 months, and then Mitch was just going to break it off like Forrest Gump and go running down the street like every other kid does. Yeah, that was my original idea of what was going to happen. Reality set in about 6 months into that, when I was realizing that it's going to be a much longer process if that ever happens. But what I started to see was other fringe benefits starting to come from it that I wasn't expecting. So the one goal that I was looking for became not important. because I saw all these other things that were happening that were so positive that it made the one goal that I had originally gone into it for lackluster. It wasn't the goal. He like I was telling you, he was a kid with cortical visual impairment. He would never, like, you'd lay toys out in front of him and he couldn't even see them, let alone pick which one that he wanted from that group of them. But when we started walking with Trexo, I saw his head start turning left and right at the things that were moving past his head. And like one thing led to the next, and then his arm went out and he grabbed branches off a tree one day. And I was like, okay, this is actually, there's these outside things that I was not anticipating that just started happening. And like,
But I feel more importantly, like, you were the true agent of change. You found something that maybe brought you in more control and
well, that,
take agency.
absolutely. Like it empowered me in a way that like I was given a tool that I could actually affect change in the way that that I wanted to affect change. Where before I felt helpless and I couldn't do anything. I was on like this speeding train that was just going and I was on it, but I couldn't steer it.
Because it didn't really stop at Trexo. I think the therapy, the benefits there.
It was like the beginning of it all. Like seeing that device, it changed my life completely. Like I used to work with adults with acquired brain injury, and I totally changed. And I got to, like honestly, for the last 3 years, I got to be like a fly on the wall in every family who got one of these devices, trying to help them to do what I was doing with my kid as a coach. It is an incredibly rewarding position to have, and you can help that family affect change and become empowered. Like when we got this thing for Mitch and Trexo became part of our lives, like I changed lots of things. Not only did like obviously COVID closed the world down, but like I personally went from a place of like helplessness and just feeling like just awful to a place of empowerment. And like I started running. Like I'm gonna take this on a little side tangent here, but like
I was gonna take you there anyways.
I know you were. I know you were. It's all good. But like March 17th, 2020, just before we got this thing delivered to us, like we had finally paid for it at the end of February, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be like an agent of change. I've got the tools now that I can do something with it, and everything like mentally flopped. And I went from somebody who was less than and in a train that was out of control and I couldn't do anything about it to somebody who had the tools to be able to do something about it. And like, okay, so if I'm going to fix him, I got to fix me too. And I started running, and I run, like I said, I'm stubborn. I've done 5K basically every single day since March 17, 2020 in the morning before Mitch wakes up, because it's good for you. And it has paid off I don't even know how to describe, I'm a different person now than I was then in
Wow.
every way.
I gotta pause with that. That's 1,778 days since March 17, 2020 that you've been running every day 5 kilometers.
So there is a caveat. January 2022, I couldn't run because I slipped on ice and thought I broke my leg. So there's 30 days there that don't count, that didn't happen. But then day 31, I ran 5K.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Did you just,
yeah,
I'm sorry, Mammy, did you just pull that out of your head, like quickly add that? I mean, or did you have that scripted already? Tell me.
No, that just,
He's going to tell you
Run
to run it. No,
that. Yeah. Just
like
perplexity that.
I got fingers out and toes, like, oh my God.
But yeah, no, like, and honestly, I used to have a bad back and I need to be able to pick Mitchell up. And I went from a guy who was depressed and felt like I had no control to the opposite of that.
Super, super inspirational story. And of course, let's talk about, like, you joined Trexo. So
yeah,
when we were just starting off, like I was, as you know, doing the deliveries by myself, doing the trainings, and we were like, we need to hire someone. And it was like, this is such a hard role. Like, you need to be empathetic. You need to really understand this. You need to be able to like relate. You need to sell. You need to this is a very, very difficult role. And we were like, you know, maybe the best person would be a parent who's done this before. Um, and then, saw Mark and I think I remembered that you were
Okay,
you'd been in
I'm going to
rehab.
take this on a tangent because there's a funny aspect to this, because I used to have my own company where I used to work with acquired brain injury people on the side, and it was called Robert Rehab Services. And you thought I was a physiotherapist, which is why you reached out first, because I'm not, but it worked out really well. And at the same time, you guys were looking for somebody to train, and I had just gone and brought the Trexo to my son's school, dropped it off, trained all the staff at the school, and called you up and said, "Hey, just so you know, like the Trexo's at the school. How do I connect this thing to the internet there?" And you went, what? You can't train them yet. What? No, all the training comes from us. I'm like, okay.
And it was the smoothest training I had ever done. It was like, no questions, got it right away, started using it. I was like, wow, okay, he knows what he's doing. So it was a bit of a no-brainer initially, but man, what an inspiring story, like truly, truly inspiring story. And I think as a agent of change yourself, you've become an agent of change for so many others as well, in terms of helping them and kind of bringing this mindset to people. And that's kind of what the mobility mindset is all about, right? So couldn't have been a better person to start this off than you. So it's awesome.